Well, hello, you beautiful souls. Today we are diving right into a breathwork journey that introduced me to my ancestors. It allowed me to process generational trauma, in addition to learning about the natures of time, and as always, the responsibility of what it means to be one of the spiritual participants, those that are chosen to really come here and learn and grow and heal and be the ones that break the chains and the cycles within your family and your bloodline. So we're going to be diving right into it. This was a powerful journey. Now, at this point, this is, I believe, my fourth actual breathwork ceremony, and it was done at what was called a restival called Samadhi Summer. So shout out Jared and Nat. Um, and this was a potent one. I didn't have any intentions going into it other than I just want to learn. I just want to grow. So before I get started with this one, as always, I say that the reason why I've had such a crazy impact with breathwork journeys themselves is because of the primary awakenings or the awakening of the mind, the heart, and the gut that I went through. And I would say because of those experiences, I was always able to really just let the body do what it needs to do and take a seat back in the theater of the mind and just witness and establish and being in that pure witnessing the beauty of life can unfold, and these ancient practices of pranayama and breath work can actually really activate, and then you just get taken on a journey, and as you'll hear, wild things play out. um, Now the setup for this one was 3 rounds of polytropic breathing. They went into the methods of fill your lower lung, fill the upper lung, exhale out. How slow or how fast is going to be essentially your gas pedal or your brakes. And given the states that I can achieve in these types of practices, I always kind of go pedal to the metal. So, it's a summer day up in Darrington, Washington, and it's Saturday, July 16th. Just did a cacao ceremony and was dropping in with my meditation blanket on my mat right underneath like a big beautiful tree. And as I mentioned earlier, I didn't have really any intentions other than just to heal going into this one. But instantly when that first round started, the body just dropped into a deep meditative state, I should say, and the quad box arose. And those that are new to the channel, so when I get into these, I would say, intense meditative states, I get like a quad box. I have my experience in my body going on. And in this case, it was just eyes closed, feeling the body. If I wanted to open them, I could see the sky. And then down below, it's this white space like the Matrix. And just as the movie is, it's literally just like a white, vibrant, beautiful room. And it's not necessarily like LED lighting, but it's just like really just bright and uplifting. And then across from that, I tend to have what you could call like the bodily experience of whatever it is I'm seeing in this top right box, which is usually just glimpses and it's sounds and it's memories or it's things that coming up from other people's perspectives, things of that nature. And then again, I'm feeling it physically in this. So these two are really connected in this, specifically in this journey. And that first round, I was met with a young, like black toddler. And instantly the energy was felt, and it was my father. Now, this was in 2022, and my father had passed on September 11, 2021. Again, I was not thinking about him in this moment. It just popped in to the experience once the quad box was really like kind of getting established, and I was in the white space, and he looked cute, a little cutie, but he was absolutely sad and terrified. And he felt really, how can I frame this? He felt really alone, felt really isolated. And in the memories that were kind of shining or like flashing, it was essentially an adult, whether it be like his mother or not, he was getting closed into a closet and essentially just left there. He was being abandoned or left in the dark. And in his emotional body, in that bottom screen, it was just filled again with all just like that angst and dread and just loneliness, sadness. And it was a very like inner focus of like what's wrong with me almost. Like is taking it personally to like the nth degree, again, being a small child. And I was literally just left there holding him. And I asked to pick him up and I just held him and just rocked. And we just were doing this for a while in the white space. And in this moment, my actual body is just crying. There's really not too much going on. Just breathing is obviously getting really intense, but it was just tears were flowing. And to feel that emotional release and that abandonment and that really loss, that loneliness, it was truly saddening. It was isolation. And it was the first like kind of like crack in my heart that broke it a little bit. And mind you, this came out of left field. So in this experience, I wasn't really knowing what to expect, and I definitely didn't see that coming. So when I would say like the off round happened, I was really kind of taken back. I slowed down the breaths pretty rapidly. I didn't see the quad box anymore, but that lingering, just like kind of like heartbreak was still there. And as I get going into this second experience, it just kind of amplified. Like I felt the heartbreak even more. And when it came to this round, it felt like it was like a native ancestor just because of the coloration, like, dark skinned woman, longer hair, really big cheekbones, young and beautiful. And I was with her in the white space, just holding her hand, and she was just weeping and wailing. And then I started to get these glimpses of memories of, and even verbally saying it in my physical body. Because again, remember, these two are tied. What I am experiencing in my body and what's kind of like being processed through theirs, or whoever, these people are, it was essentially tying the speech. So I'm like muttering and yelling, like, don't take my baby. And in this moment, the vision was literally someone coming in and like taking a child away from the mother after a few minutes. Like the birth happened, little skin to skin, and then the baby was taken away. And in this moment, the weeping just started to come down like really intensely, purely because it's that heartbreak of losing a child. And in this moment, I just thought this was one of my native ancestors. Now, the meditation the next day, which I'll come back to at the end of this, I was actually being given the information that like, and meeting her, it was my auntie, my father's older sister. And so the experience is still going on. Like I'm feeling intense dread and heartbreak and living through that moment of just separation. So again, that theme of just like loneliness, abandonment, neglect, betrayal, like all these things started to come through and pour out from my own beingness. And I just started sobbing even harder. Now, this one really kind of like messed me up a little bit, I would say, because I felt the love that a mother feels when their baby's first born, and like that same rush of like oxytocin. Like I literally processed that in my body and feeling the bond and the connection. And then to have that stripped, it literally felt like someone was stabbing me in the heart. And at that moment, in the pause between that second round, I kind of just was still in that quad box state. And then this is when the ancestral aspect started to come into play, because I just kept saying internally in the white space, just like, why am I being shown this? What is going on? Like, why am I here right now living through this? I don't want to experience this. This is terrifying. This is sad. And I just kept feeling beings and people around me. And all they kept saying is just like, just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep going. So we kick into the third round, and I don't know how long the rounds are at this point. I don't really remember. I think they were like 10 and 10, could have been off, but all these experiences felt like 20-minute movies. And we get into the third round, and I start to feel this increasing dread build up, and like they're kind of giving us the cues, like, and we're gonna get ready to drop in for the third round. And I felt at peace for like a sliver of a moment, and then this fear started to kick in, and it started to creep in more and more. And during this time, I was really connecting with the pathway of Yeshua the Christ. So I remember speaking this mantra that I used to say is like, I cast all fear to the Christ light within and become free. And I kept repeating that over and over. And then I felt the sun and just like warming up my cheek coming through like the canopy of the tree that I was under. And I'm in the white space, and I start to see like this this little pretty black girl, hair all done up, and she had almost like a little like a Sunday outfit, for church. And I'm sitting there looking at her, and she's just sitting there, just kind of like this, looking around. And then I start getting glimpses of being on a bed, and it's like a happiness comes through, like, oh, it's an excitement to see this person. And then all of a sudden this fear starts to kick in, and I feel my heart racing. And it's that parallel aspect here too, where it's like I feel the body of that child starting to just freak out, like fight or flight, fawn, freeze, like that flee and that fight response was starting to really dial in. And I felt my body starting to shake, and I didn't want to keep going. I honestly wanted to stop. And right as I finished, like, kind of saying like the third mantra of I cast all fear, Christ light within and become free, I felt the hand of one of the angel helpers. Shout out to Anara. I appreciate you for this moment, because the moment that happened, the experience began. And trigger warning for those that have been abused or assaulted, it was a rape scene that was playing out. And I was just getting the glimpses and like the pain. And this is kind of where things took like the wildest turn in terms of just the experience of breathwork. Is I started to actually let out screams, and it was not my voice. It was a child's voice. And it was everything you could think of in terms of saying stop and no that was coming out. And then the weeping and the wailing. And as I'm just like literally just sitting there with my arm over the toddler's back, or the child's back, in the white space, I'm shook. I'm like jarred. Like we're both just kind of like clinging to each other, because that fear is in me, and everything was just getting processed and released in one go. So lots of just, again, like the child voice coming out of just like, no, stop, screams. I'm wailing, I'm sobbing, and I'm shaking and petrified. And the round ended. I'm still in the quad box. Like I'm still in the experience. I don't remember hearing much of like what was going on in the breakdown. I was just in my experience. And from the physical body, I know that I curled up into the fetal position and was just shaking and trembling. And this is when my pleas and my dissatisfaction came up to the front. I was very upset. I was very mad. And I go, how could you? Why would you show me this? What is going on with this? And then it turns into like Avatar: The Last Airbender kind of style. You just start seeing, and I start feeling and seeing, I should say, these people starting to come towards me in like this kind of like very like blue, ethereal, white light. And I'm sitting in the middle of like this like kind of almost illuminated circle, kind of like a medicine wheel. And I'm in the center dot, or in the center circle, and everyone just starts to circle around me, and they say, it had to be you. It was always you. We chose this for you. You volunteered. You chose this yourself. You're the reason why. It had to be through you. It's okay. You're safe. Like, and it essentially was just like reassurance and consoling. And at this point, it goes away from like the quad box. It's now just like two boxes, two experiences, or two viewpoints of awareness. And it's my body seeing and feeling like the whole nervous system just kind of like resetting. And in the white space, it's essentially me now like sitting up from like just being just like on the ground, just like deflated, defeated. And they start laying their hands on my shoulder and my back, and I start actually feeling it physically in my body. And it's almost just like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. So I start feeling that back rub. And this is when I started to get lessons of time. And part of it was like a visual, like things kind of like playing out, like they're showing, and then it's literally like creating itself in front so you can see it. And then a lot of it was just also downloads. So like instantaneous. It wasn't really like verbal communication. It was kind of just like they would show something, and then it was just a bunch of information would come in. And the way that I can explain it is that I started to see like waves and ribbon, do it like this. I started to see waves and like ribbons of time. It was like a really fancy braid, and it was kind of like if you pluck a string on a guitar or something, you see those vibrations. It was kind of like that. And then I started to see different nodules kind of like pop up, like that was a node. And then like one of these braids would start to light up, and that was a node, and that was a node. And then it showed like kind of like down here, and it goes, and these are again like the ancestors just teaching and instructing. And essentially what they were saying is, like It always had to be you, because you are essentially the capacitor. You are the one that was chosen to hold the bandwidth, because you are going to be tasked with the change. You're the one that's going to be essentially the, I guess you could say, like the putting the team on their back type of person. Like you were just holding it down. Now, the reason why is because these traumatic events had to get compartmentalized. That potential energy of the experience, the trauma, the wounds, in order for them to move forward to even have you, things had to be held by you, essentially, and processed by you in the future. Because again, time is one of those things where it's like, it kind of felt like everything was more like this, like a kind of like a flowing river. So when you think about it like that, like you can kind of just punch through and you go straight down into like a straight shot. So we come back into this point where they're showing me like these three different moments in time where like the younger versions of what I now know is my father, my auntie, and my grandmother, that they had to split. And the only reason why they could even do that psychologically and energetically and the spiritual component is because you're the one that has to heal that. The generational, I would say, cycle breakers, that's the job. And that brought a lot more of like the reassurance and like, I get it. And then they really were just consoling with the aspect of like the honor. Like, hey, like it's an honor to do this for yourself. It's an honor to be that one. So take it with pride, in a sense of like, obviously it's like humble pride, but take it with a sense of grace, knowing that this was something that you volunteered for, you chose, and it'll be okay. Like this moment was needed for it to actually be released. Now, we fast forward to the meditation the following morning, and this is where it was just, again, forest bathing, just literally in a bunch of trees around. And I was met with my auntie, and she was like way younger, super long hair, and she looks really native when she was younger. I didn't really know that because she was thinned out a little bit. And this is when she kind of approached. She's like, hey, like you like processed a lot of that like pretty accurately, but it wasn't like a native ancestor for the second round. It was me. And like my auntie Gwen had passed. I'm trying to think, where did I have it down? She passed away um, like in 2014. And that's something for me where it was like, again, like she wasn't in my radar at all in that sense. But she started to essentially talk to me about what I was actually experiencing. And in this breakdown, it played out in the sense of both my father, my auntie, and my grandmother all had moments where they could have fought and done things differently to prolong their life. And they chose to opt out. It was one of those conscious choices. And in this lesson, it was a lesson of the heart where there was a core wound that caused them to not receive love. And that I was on that same path of not receiving love. Now, because of the past betrayals and things that I've experienced in my life, and you know, the many wounds that we all go through, but many in this realm of the heart, I was very closed off at actually receiving love. And in that same sense, it was that isolation that would hinder my development. And I wasn't meant to cut my life short or opt out. And that was the responsibility. And there, again, it's herself. And at this point, it's kind of like all the ancestors kind of speaking through her. And she says this very real line of like, if you didn't go through this now and this wasn't brought to your attention, you would repeat the same mistakes we did. And you're not intended to. You're here to end them. And that's when the aha moment started to come in and helped me process even more. Now, between that meditation and the breath work itself, you know, again, shout out to Anara. I think me and her talked for like 3 hours, just like talking about time, because she had experienced something in that same vein as well, of the threads of time and the nature of time. And that alone, you know, just being able to kind of like tennis match, ping pong, like back and forth with that, helped me kind of like like understand like what was actually going like in my experience and what was actually being processed, because a lot of this was just so emotionally jarring. It was just like I was watching and being like the main actor in the film. And it definitely cracked open some things. Not gonna lie. um, Emotionally, just I would say like spiritually, even just the sense of this construct and gaining a deeper understanding of time and how things work and are interconnected across the generations. So the overall processing of this one after that breathwork experience and the meditation and all the conversation and things that were received really put me in that position of knowing that epigenetics, the things that we hold in our DNA, like there's a reason why, your DNA can hold multiple terabytes of information, because we literally pass on these wounds, and the familial wounds, the generational wounds, those traumas, they can be liberated and released through practices like breath work. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to highlight this one today, because it's wild. Like I can't put it into words fully, the cinematic nature of some of these experiences, but it happened. And to actually feel it and to process other people's emotions, that threw me for quite the plot twist. Because thus far in the previous breathwork journeys, it's just been my own. I literally thought it was just like an isolated thing. I was like, okay, I'm just processing my stuff. But through this practice, I've come to realize the limitless nature of our potential when it comes to transversing time and space through the breath. It's quite the trippy modality, to say the least, but it is a catalyzing and really powerful force, to have that experience of not only helping, relatives, parent process things like their traumas and their wounds, but to also have it coming in like in such a blind, out of left field way. It just grounded me in an even deeper truth that we don't know everything. We barely know anything. And a saying that I like to often, remind to people that I work with and my students is like, listen, like I know a lot of the things that I do may seem very like high level and advanced, but the humbling factor that I always live with is like, I maybe understand like 13 grains of sand of this great mystery, but I'm in the full knowing all the time that I am standing on a beach and shoreline that knows no end in sight. There is so much that we can actually open ourselves up to receive in this world when we put ourselves in the position to. And from the awakenings to the practice and application of breath work, there is nothing you cannot do in my eyes. And all aspects and natures of time and space can be tapped into. And it really doesn't matter. It's just kind of like set your gaze for the direction and it'll happen. In some cases, you'll get something completely unexpected like this one. But I'm very grateful for it, because that feeling and that energy of the ancestors, and like seeing my aunt, like I've had experiences with people who have passed beyond the veil before. How's it going, folks? But in this sense, this was the first time that I was actually kind of met by the whole posse and the whole team. And that laying of the hands was especially beautiful because I was experiencing again in that white space, that spiritual astral realm, whatever people want to call it. I call it the matrix white space. I was experiencing that laying of the hands there, and I was feeling it in my physical body. And that love and that support that our team is always present witnessing is accessible whenever we seek. We just need to ask. And that's the beautiful aspect of time, again, because we're interconnected. It doesn't matter what time and space and physicality we're in. That love component is that purest bridge. And that's how you know, whenever you have any of these types of experiences yourself, what is real and what is not, or what is of the light and what is of the dark or the shadow, is that it comes through a frequency of love and sincerity. And that is felt on like a cellular level. You can feel it. It can play no games with the mind. But overall, again, this experience was absolutely mind-blowing. It completely shattered my understanding of time and space. I was able to establish a connection with my ancestors that has never left, and I do feel them. And my encouragement, I guess, is that you can, too. And the beautiful thing here is, because there were so many years from when like my father passed, my aunt passed, and my grandmother passed, and to have them pop up in that experience and to hold space for them, it was extra important and beautiful for me to actually know that, you know, it doesn't matter. We can still feel their presence and their energy. And that has been to me the most rewarding kind of like Easter egg that I was revealed, because that's been a connection that I've been able to cultivate throughout time even more. Now, little fun fact, like when my father first passed away, when I got the news, I instantly like dropped in and met him in like the white robes, and it was cool. You know, it was beautiful to feel that presence and that energy. And that truly is something that can never be taken from us. And it is a connection that transcends time and space. And I've had experiences with ex-girlfriend's mother who had passed, and other relatives throughout my life thus far since then, since 2021. And as long as you're able to tap into that love, you can always communicate with them. So if there's anything that people gain from this one today, outside of like the breath and the formats and things, it's the fact that like, please connect with your ancestors. Please connect with your loved ones. It means a lot to them, and they're always here. So I got to say with that, I feel complete in that. And if there's any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. But yeah, ancestors got your back always. And time and space, what it doesn't mean much. And there's a lot of things that go down, and you can actually consciously work on some of these things. So that's a little bit of the encouragement here with this one. But with that, thanks for dropping in. Don't forget, subscribe if you're new. Give the video a like. And with that, may the fruit of knowledge offer a seed, and in that seed may your love, will, and intuition give life and nourishment, for a tree shall grow, and in its shade may you find peace, and offer peace to all whom ask. Namaste. I'm about to die with you. And if you want some actual like guided breath works, I've been having some ideas and seed thoughts just kind of like getting planted and input in brain. And I have a feeling that I'm going to do some different guided meditations for folks that are like geared towards a little bit more of this breath worky work. So if you'd like that, let me know. Post in the comments. What meditations do you need? How can I be of service to you in this growing community? And with that, I love you. Peace.